All right, guys, let's continue with reading. We're still in part two, and this is video number two.
To my feet and looked back at the edge of the forest as though I had expected an answer of some sort to that black display of confidence. You know, the foolish notions that come to one sometimes. The high stillness confronted these two figures with its ominous patience, waiting for the passing away of a fantastic invasion. They swore aloud together, out of sheer fright, I believe, then, pretending not to know anything of my existence, turned back to the station. The sun was low, and leaning forward side by side, they seemed to be tugging painfully uphill, their two ridiculous shadows of unequal length that trailed behind them slowly over the tall grass without bending a single blade.
Okay, so I've always liked this part. So Marlowe jumps up to look at the forest too, and they're startled by him and are like, "What? Oh, who? No, I wasn't talking." And they walk away. And as they're walking, Marlowe can really see their shadows, and he sees the shadows more than he sees the people. And it says that they're walking, the shadows are moving over the grass without bending a single blade. What symbol or idea does that refer back to that Conrad keeps using? It's like playing Dora the Explorer. Hollow men, the idea of nobody having anything inside of them, and so they're not even moving the grass, when they're walking away. Okay, I hope you're enjoying this game we're playing.
In a few days, the El Dorado expedition went into the patient wilderness that closed upon it as the sea closes over a diver. Long afterwards, the news came that all the donkeys were dead. I know nothing as to the fate of the less valuable animals. They, no doubt, like the rest of us, found what they deserved. I did not inquire. I was then rather excited at the prospect of meeting Kurtz very soon.
Okay,
when I say very soon...
Sorry. So when he hears the El Dorado expedition goes out, this is kind of a strange little paragraph. He says he hears the donkeys are dead, but he didn't inquire about the lesser animals. I mean, in some ways, I guess this could mean the animals that they're carrying with them, like maybe some chickens or something. But the fact that he says they got what they deserved, I think he's actually talking about humans here. I think that he's implying here that the donkeys were worth more than the explorers who were going with him. So, and yeah, he's starting to get more and more excited about Kurtz. And this is where our story really changes from a journey of adventure more to a quest to become, a way to see Kurtz and figure out who he is. And so be looking for more of that moving forward.
Comparatively. It was just 2 months from the day we left the creek when we came to the bank below Kurtz's station. Going up that river was like traveling back to the earliest beginnings of the world, when vegetation rioted on the earth, and the big trees were kings. An empty stream, a great silence, an impenetrable forest. The air was warm, thick, heavy, sluggish. There was no joy in the brilliance of sunshine. The long stretches of the waterway ran on, deserted, into the gloom of overshadowed distances. On silvery sandbanks, hippos and alligators sunned themselves side by side. The broadening waters flowed through a mob of wooded islands. You lost your way on that river, as you would in a desert, and butted all day long against shoals trying to find the channel, till you thought yourself bewitched and cut off forever from everything you had known once, somewhere, far away, in another existence perhaps. There were moments when one's past came back to one, as it will sometimes when you have not a moment to spare for yourself. But it came in the shape of an unrestful and noisy dream, remembered with wonder amongst the overwhelming realities of this strange world of plants and water and silence. And this stillness of life did not in the least resemble a peace. It was the stillness of an implacable force brooding over an inscrutable intention. It looked at you with a vengeful aspect.
So what's the it in this sentence? Look back through the sentences. What is he talking about here? This is something that they do on the AP test a lot. They, find a pronoun. They say, well, what's the antecedent? Like, what is it referring to? And so, if you trace this one back, you're going to be talking about nature and the forest itself. And as Marlowe is driving this steamboat up the river, it takes them 2 months to get to Kurtz, he said. He's describing the scenery and the forest itself. And you'll notice a lot of personification of the forest. And here, if you look at the words that describe it, I wish I had my book in front of me, but he calls it a force. He says that it's super still, like they're the only sound, making its way through the jungle. And then it seems to be looking at them and just trying to kind of figure them out. And you'll see more of that as it goes on. And he says that it's like the massive trees and the untouched land. People haven't been here before. And so this is like a total adventure for them. Well, for him, for sure. Maybe not for everybody.
I got used to it afterwards. I didn't see it anymore. I had no time. I had to keep guessing at the channel. I had to discern, mostly by inspiration, the signs of hidden banks. I watched for sunken stones. I was learning to clap my teeth smartly before my heart flew out, when I shaved by a fluke some infernal, sly old snag that would have ripped the life out of that tin-pot steamboat and drowned all the pilgrims. I had to keep a lookout for the signs of dead wood we could cut up in the night for next day's steaming.
So Marlowe, just when he starts to get a little philosophical there about the surroundings and the stillness, is brought back to reality because his job is to drive the steamboat, and he's driving it, and it's hard to watch where everything is and to drive down a riverway where he really doesn't know much about what's coming up, and he's not very comfortable with the surroundings. And so that's kind of what he's having to stay focused on.
When you have to attend to things of that sort, to the mere incidents of the surface, the reality, I tell you, fades. The inner truth is hidden, luckily. But I felt it all the same. I felt often its mysterious stillness watching me at my monkey tricks, just as it watches you fellows performing on your respective tightropes for, what is it, half a crown a tumble?
Try to be civil, Marlowe, growled a voice, and I knew there was at least one listener awake besides myself.
So the voice changed, and we know that we're back on the Nelly. So Marlowe here is talking about how the forest watched him do his monkey tricks. And he's talking about his job, and like all the work he's having to do on the boat. But he makes it almost sound like a circus act, like a show of some sort. And he even puts the other sailors into that same category with him. He said, just like it watches you, on your tight ropes for only half a crown. And you can be thinking about what he means there as far as referring to his job that way. But he does, and then someone speaks up from the boat. This is the first time that anyone else has spoken in the book, just so you know.
I beg your pardon. I forgot the heartache which makes up the rest of the price. And indeed, what does the price matter, if the trick be well done? You do your tricks very well. And I didn't do badly either. Since I managed not to sink that steamboat on my first trip, it's a wonder to me yet. Imagine a blindfolded man, set to drive a van over a bad road.
We laughed about this in fifth period because there are no vans, at this time period. So what is he referring to here? We kind of suggested maybe a caravan. But, he's talking about the price of his job and really the price of any job and what you're willing to give up for it. But anyway, he's at least proud of what he did accomplish on this steamboat because he made it through. He's kind of bragging on himself, but we're glad he made it too.
I sweated and shivered over that business considerably, I can tell you. After all, for a seaman to scrape the bottom of a thing that's supposed to float all the time under his care is the unpardonable sin. No one may know of it, but you never forget the thump, huh? A blow on the very heart. You remember it. You dream of it. You wake up at night and think of it years after, and go hot and cold all over. I don't pretend to say that the steamboat floated all the time. More than once, she had to wade for a bit, with 20 cannibals splashing around and pushing. We had
Okay, before we get to the cannibals, which are really important, let's back up just a little bit. What keeps Marlowe up at night? The thump, right? What's the thump? Every time he hits that bottom of the steamboat onto the riverbed. He talks about that keeps him up at night. Um, what does he mean overall, not just for people who are driving boats? It's that idea of failure. When you have a job to do and you don't do it and you don't succeed, how that, keeps you up at night and how that wakes you up with nightmares thinking about the times that you failed. I think that's actually really relatable. But yes, Marlowe's group here, there's pilgrims on the boat, the station manager, and cannibals. They hired cannibals to go with them, and they knowingly hired cannibals. You're here.
Did some of these chaps on the way for a crew. Fine fellows, cannibals, in their place. They were men one could work with, and I'm grateful to them. And after all, they did not eat each other before my face.
Huh.
They had brought along a provision of hippo meat which went rotten, and made the mystery of the wilderness stink in my nostrils.
The mystery of the wilderness, a.k.a. rotten hippo meat.
Pooh, I can sniff it now. I had the manager on board, and 3 or 4 pilgrims with their staves, all complete. Sometimes we came upon a station close by the bank, clinging to the skirts of the unknown, and the white men, rushing out of a tumble-down hovel with great gestures of joy and surprise and welcome, seemed very strange, had the appearance of being held there, captive by a spell. The word ivory would ring in the air for a while, and on we went again, into the silence, along empty reaches, round still bends, between the high walls of our winding way, reverberating in hollow claps the ponderous beat of the stern wheel. Trees, trees, millions of trees, massive.
So, 5th period, if you're joining in, this is where we left off. That was that paragraph I was trying to read when I only had 2 minutes left. So, okay, now you know where we are. We're about at minute 12 on the second video.
Mints, running up high, and at their foot, hugging the bank against the stream, crept the little begrimed steamboat, like a sluggish beetle crawling on the floor of a lofty portico. It made you feel very small, very lost, and yet it was not altogether depressing, that feeling. After all, if you were small, the grimy beetle crawled on, which was just what you wanted it to do. Where the pilgrims imagined it crawled to, I don't know. To some place where they expected to get something, I bet. For me, it crawled toward Kurtz, exclusively. But when the steam pipes started leaking, we crawled very slow. The reaches opened before us and closed behind, as if the forest had stepped leisurely across the water to bar the way for our return. We penetrated deeper and deeper into the heart of darkness.
Okay, so every time a book title is mentioned, you got to pay attention. And so this is the first reference where it actually says heart of darkness. In this instance, he's actually talking about nature. But we are moving further and further away from civilization. So is this darkness the unknown? Is it darkness away from civilization? Is it darkness because we're getting closer to Kurtz? These are things that we'll have to look back on when we finish the whole story and see kind of what he was referring to. But I love these descriptions of the forest opening up and closing behind them, and just becoming almost like a character in the story, allowing them passage but never letting them get too close.
It was very quiet there. At night sometimes the roll of drums behind the curtain of trees would run up the river and remain sustained, faintly, as if hovering in the air high over our heads, till the first break of day. Whether it meant war, peace, or prayer, we could not tell. The dawns were heralded by the descent of a chill stillness.
So when they're hearing the drums at night, Marlowe admits that no one on the boat knows exactly what the drums mean. And this is again highlighting this idea of the lack of communication between the groups and the lack of understanding between the cultures. All right, well, we'll get ready for video 3 now.